Welcome, everyone, to the Sports Illustrated Media Podcast. I am your host, Jimmy Traina. Thank you for listening. Got a big show. Going to kick things off this week with a conversation I had with Jon Wertheim of Sports Illustrated, where we talk about our former colleague, Grant Wahl, and the shocking and tragic passing of Grant last Friday. Jon's been with SI as long as anyone, worked closely with Grant. So we share some memories and talk about Grant Wahl with Jon Wertheim. Following Jon Wertheim, Greg Olsen, lead analyst for NFL on Fox, joins the podcast for a fun interview, and then Train of Thoughts with Sal Licata to wrap it all up. Before we get to it, quickly, if you've missed any recent episodes, check them out in the archives. Richard Deitch from The Athletic was on last week, Mike Tirico 2 weeks ago, Kevin Burkhardt 3 weeks ago, Joe Buck 4 weeks ago. Go into the archives, check them out. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe to the SI Media Podcast, rate and review. We'll read a review. If you leave a review on Apple, we'll read it on the podcast in the coming weeks. All right, big show. Let's get to it. Jon Wertheim on Grant Wahl, followed by Greg Olsen from Fox, followed by Train of Thoughts, all right here on the SI Media Podcast. All right, joining me now, senior writer, but his title is much deeper than that. For Sports Illustrated, also a 60 Minutes, a SI legend, Jon Wertheim. Couldn't think of a better person to come on as we try to pay tribute here in some little way to our former colleague, Grant Wahl. Jon, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. No,
thanks for doing a segment on Grant, Jimmy.
Had to be done. He was at SI for so long. One of the, it's for people listening, I think it's so different for you and I than people listening because we've both been at SI for so long and there's so few of us left from sort of that era, quote unquote. And Grant was one of those people who was there for so long, like you and I. There's no way I couldn't do something here. You wrote a great piece for SI that everyone should check out about Grant. Right off the top, just initial thoughts on the kind of person Grant was, what it was like to work with him, and your relationship with him.
I was struck by what you just said. You said, he was at SI for all those years, and that little preposition does a lot of work. He was really at SI. He didn't just work for the magazine and see his name pop up. He was a presence. I mean, you know this. You'd walk down the hall, and there was Grant, and you'd lock up your city bike, and Grant was right behind you to go to work for the day. He really had a presence. And when we had offices, his door was open. And when he worked at a cubicle, it was fine. He was Grant Wahl, titan of soccer. And it didn't matter if he was sitting next to the intern that day, he would still do his thing. It's really hard, sort of post-COVID and the state of sports media. It's really hard, I think, to sort of talk about his impact on the culture of Sports Illustrated and, being a collegial coworker. He and I somebody thought we started the same day. I don't know about that, but we started right around the same time in the late 90s, and we shared an office. We were friends immediately. We had a very similar background, and I think we were very different kinds of writers, but I think our sort of goals and aspirations were pretty much the same. He was obviously had this one sport that he was fixated on covering, and did it at an unrivaled, unparalleled level. I've been saying, if it were up to Grant, he would have been the full-time soccer writer the day he walked in the door. It's not as though he had this genius idea in 2010 to be full-time soccer. I mean, I think he had to negotiate for that. He would have done that right away. But you know this every bit as much as I do. He was just he wasn't just a coworker. He was a teammate. It's very easy to lapse into cliche when we talk about him, but he really did want everyone to succeed. And in a weird way, I think he was much more competitive with himself. He held himself to very high standards. He was not competitive as a colleague. He and I collaborated on a number of pieces, and even working alongside him, it was a pleasure. You write this paragraph, I'll do this one. And we were very friendly socially, but I think we were also sort of very friendly as colleagues. And it's just, I mean, I can't believe we're having this conversation. I mean, it's just, again, they talk about cliches, like every cliche, it's surreal. It's a mix of you're heartbroken, you're shocked. I mean, I can't wrap my brain. X days later, I still can't believe we're having this conversation.
Yeah. The Friday night when the news broke, that night, it seems so surreal. I think I feel a little better about the fact that his body's back here. We've got the reports now. It was just this, I don't know if fluke is the word you use for a death, but it was he had a blood vessel burst. He had an aortic aneurysm. And that's one of the things, here we have a guy 49 years old who looked 30, was in phenomenal shape. You mentioned the bike. I mean, he rode his bike to the office all the time.
Yeah.
And then you have this happen. It's just so hard to process.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is someone who, a week ago we would have said, oh yeah, that's the guy who listens to podcasts on the rowing machine in his apartment. I mean, there was no sense this was coming, obviously. I mean, the fact that it happened at the World Cup, this quadrennial event where Grant would take pride in sort of working harder than anyone else during a game in the press box. I mean, it's just this confluence, just the fact pattern alone. And then I also think, I'm really like, you and I know what a good guy he was. You and I know what an extraordinary, exquisite journalist he was. But man, even with that, I mean, these tributes are really, I take great comfort of it. I know Celine, his wife, does as well. And it's really extraordinary. And from LeBron James down to the intern 20 years ago, I mean, again, the cliche police would be out in full force here, but you talk about living a meaningful life and you talk about impacting lives. And these last few days with Grant have just been an extraordinary expression of that.
Yeah. And, it's funny. I don't want to give off the impression that like Grant and I were great friends. Like we weren't like, texting, but we really liked each other, always chatted when we saw each other. This made me think a lot too about relationships, like work relationships specifically, because you have these people in your lives for so many years and maybe you're not, quote unquote close. They don't know your inner secrets. They don't know what goes on with your family, but you see them so often. And it really, it's, I don't want to be crass here while we're memorializing something, but it's really a mind fuck in a way. It really did a number on me because, what I loved about Grant was he knew I wasn't a soccer guy. I don't follow the sport. I don't know anything about the sport. And and some people get offended when you don't follow their sport. Grant was always so good about it. I even posted in one of my columns this week that the last couple of exchanges we had on Twitter was him saying like he was looking forward to World Cup coverage and Traina thoughts. And he had a really great way about it too. So it's impossible to believe this has happened. But he was there are plenty of people who've come through the doors through the years that were really good people. There are people that you may not have liked that you were. I never heard anyone ever say a bad word about Grant, ever, in all those years.
Well, you never had to edit his copy. But no, I would agree with that. And I think people realize too what a great teammate he was. I mean, it was sort of he took mentorship very seriously. I mean, one of my takeaways is just he became this titan in the sport. We've all sort of, I think, he owned the sport. I don't think there's a whole lot of debate. This is the great soccer writer of his time, and he had this level of media stardom and respect. And I was telling this to someone else, he didn't have a TV presence. He wasn't a shouter and a screamer. I mean, you look at you talked about this with Richard last week on your podcast. Who's at, notionally anyway, who's at the top of the sports media food chain? It's the screamers, and it's telling Shannon Sharp he sucked, and it's transactional work where, you trying to rehabilitate Deshaun Watson through an anonymous source, and it's culture wars. And Grant was none of that. Grant hated that. It offended Grant. And the fact that he could have this level of prominence, respect, status without those shortcuts. I mean, I think that one thing that a lot of people are sort of saying implicitly or explicitly is he not only achieved all this, but he did it the right way. And I think it's really this validation of media, right? He was flying over to the World Cup and changing in Istanbul. It wasn't like he was living, he didn't take his yacht over there, but he was doing his job with integrity. And I think that really is something that's come through these last few days.
And I kind of felt like an idiot in a way because I knew Grant obviously was the authority on soccer. I knew he was the soccer. One of the things I loved about being at Sports Illustrated over the years was I always felt like for a lot of the years we had quote unquote the guy. Like Grant was the soccer guy. You're the tennis guy. Verducci's the baseball guy. At the top of the professions, all of them. But even I was taken aback when I saw the outpouring for Grant because first of all, I mean, I didn't realize his reach in the soccer world where all the players, the FIFA, US Soccer with statements and everything. And then outside of the soccer world, so many people, JJ Redick talking about him during an NBA game, LeBron, Billie Jean King. I mean, Grant and I probably worked as colleagues for 20 years, and I didn't even realize I knew he was the soccer guy. Like I knew there was no soccer journalist more prolific, more important to the sport, and it still struck me the reach he had. It was really just unbelievable what you saw over the last few days.
For 10 years too, he was going to covering the Final Fours, and he was the college basketball guy. And I think it's a few things. I mean, first of all, Grant is not a look at me kind of person, right? He doesn't need to tweet at LeBron to prove that they have a relationship. He didn't sort of do this narcissism. And I also think that he had skills that carried over. And when you're a nice, efficient writer, and when you're curious and you like reporting, you can cover Maryland's NCAA title, which he did and wrote a great piece on Deadline. You can cover Maryland's NCAA title the same way you can cover soccer. But I think his heart was always in soccer. Again, I think I know this, right? I mean, if he'd had his way, he would have been the full-time soccer writer immediately. But he was as good a for 10 years. He was covered college basketball as well as anyone. Yeah,
I think. I have a horrible memory, which I kind of hate now because I wish I remembered more of the early SI stuff when I started there. You said you started late 90s. It said reports I saw was Grant started in 96, which is what I guess that's when you started, 96. Does that sound right to you at SI?
I think I was full time in 97, but yeah, okay. He graduated college in 96, went to the Miami Herald. Yeah, it's around.
And I started in 2000, and I have very vague memories of Grant covering college hoops because I think he used to do a mailbag that maybe I edited or, the .com team edited. And I don't know, somewhere along the way, I had forgotten that he was the one who wrote the Chosen One story. And I remember when I refound out in my memory, I just remember being like, well, you've got the soccer guy, again, using that expression, writing one of the most famous SI stories, which when Grant wrote that story too, he was extremely young. So it's just so cool all around that he had that story with LeBron.
Yeah, I mean, you do the math, and he would have still been in his 20s. I mean, he wrote it with this sort of mature detachment, and I think he was never one of these kind of next best things. I mean, remember the Freddie Adu podcast he did? Mm-hmm. And the whole theme of that was sort of when you're baptized as the next big thing that comes freighted with all sorts of peril. And I think I think we were still sharing an office. I mean, I know, I'll tell you two things about the LeBron story. One of them is sort of, I think he went into it a little bit skeptical. Like, I don't want to it's like Tony Mandarich, it's like you're baptizing this guy as the next great thing. And then you're the guy who, I think he was a little skeptical of like not going too far overboard. Right. And then he was blown away by LeBron. And he came back from that story. He went to Akron first because I think he really wanted to make Akron a character in the story. You know what he said to me when he came back? He said, this kid's really good. Like, enough people told me he's phenomenal, Michael Jordan's. But what he really was blown away by was William Wesley, Worldwide West. Mm-hmm. And he defiled the story. And then he's like, I want to do a story on this William West. So he's out there, he's reporting on LeBron James. It's a cover story. It ends up being this breakthrough cover. And he files a story. and it's something else he came upon in the reporting. That's where he wasn't doing a victory lap. He wasn't doing like, oh, I want to be first in line to do the LeBron memoir. There was none of that. He'd moved on. But this little detail of, hey, who is this man that seems so well connected that I've never heard of? Worldwide West, he calls himself. Boy, there's a story there. He'd already spun off his reporting into what am I going to do next? And he became obsessed with Worldwide West.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, and then obviously all the soccer stuff, which I wouldn't even begin to know where to tackle, but he that's where he obviously became this enormous figure in the journalism world. It's funny you mentioned that podcast he did with Freddie Adu. There are a few things I despise more doing this podcast when someone tells me who to put on or put someone on to promote something, whatever. And the respect I had for Grant is I had him on so he could promote that podcast, and I don't follow soccer, and he bared with me asking the dumbest questions because normally I try to put those things off as much as possible. But I had so much respect for Grant. I said, of course he can come on, but it was like, I don't know what I'm asking you, so you're going to have to handle this. And he was such a good sport about it. That was really,
good man,
yeah. And, I mentioned before about, the weirdness of this, how, I mentioned we weren't like super tight where we would take, but we'd always chat in the office. And there's another, it's another weird thing with COVID. Like I hadn't seen Grant in 3 years. We don't have an office anymore. And it just added, even more sort of murkiness. Back then I would see him at least once, twice, 3 times a week. It just, even if it's just say hello, then we'd have a chat. And, with COVID here, that you miss the office life a little bit. That was another offshoot of this. It was like, I kind of wish we had that camaraderie that we don't have anymore, unfortunately, without an office. But, COVID wreaked havoc on everything.
Do you remember when he would come in? I mean, he
with
would
the bike helmet and
yeah, exactly. All right, good.
Yeah, of course. And he sat in the back there in a little cluster, and I'd walk back there and always have a conversation and chat and kill some time.
Here's this guy who owns a sport. We see now the kind of reach he had, the respect he had. And he would come in, he'd city bike in, he'd have that ridiculous bike helmet, he'd put on his headphones because he was tracking something, and he would sit at a cubicle along with the 22-year-old intern from Northwestern. And he loved that. He loved sort of being a part of the ecosystem. And it was just, it's, again, the cliche editor would get their red pen out, but it was just about doing quality work. And he didn't care if he didn't have an office and sat in the cubicles, and he just wanted to do good work. And people would do a double take sometimes. I think like Adnan Burke, people would come to the office for you and Deitch, and they would say, I'd have people in and say, wait a second, is that Grant Wahl? They couldn't believe he didn't have his own office.
Yeah.
And you sort of said that wasn't what he was about.
Right.
He never, even with sort of socially, he didn't care at all about the hierarchy and the Time Warner bigwigs and sort of how was I going to angle to. He was more interested in talking about soccer with the video team intern than he was trying to figure out where he could get his next promotion. He just wanted to do good work
and treated everyone as well as you can. I never ever saw even a remote anything where he didn't treat someone with nothing but kindness and always helpful. And like I said, knew I wasn't a soccer person, was still supportive of me with, what I was doing. So, could always use more people like that around an office. That's for sure. It's like, I feel in my head, I'm like, are we ever going to get to a point where like this seems real? It just still does not seem real. But, I guess his wife came out, part of the statement about him having the aortic aneurysm. She said she thinks, though, he probably didn't suffer too much pain. So if you're looking for a silver lining, thank God for that. Just surreal. I really appreciate you coming on. Any last things you want to say? Anything you don't have to, but I want to give you the floor here as we wrap up talking about our former colleague, Grant Wahl.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And thanks for doing this segment, Jimmy. I think it's a natural instinct to sort of say, how do we honor this person? And we can read his work in soccer and non-soccer. If you don't like soccer, there are plenty of other stories I'm happy to point people to. But I also think, it bears some consideration about how he went about treating other people, how he went about this job of media, especially at a time when media is under stress. And it's like product placement for integrity. It's sort of easy to traffic in cliche, but when you see this kind of response and this never ending stream of stories and sort of people hitting on the same themes, but personally impacted, it's a pretty strong advertisement for sort of going about your day and your job with integrity, because people remember that and it really does matter.
I appreciate that. Well said. Just a terrible, terrible tragedy. I thank you for coming on. And, like you said, hopefully everyone out there, go read something Grant wrote, go watch a video, go listen to a podcast, and get a little feel. Thanks, Jon. I really appreciate it. Be well.
You got it. Appreciate it. You too.
Thanks. All right. Joining me now, lead analyst for Fox NFL every Sunday with Kevin Burkhardt. He is Greg Olsen. Greg, how are you? Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, doing well. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. First time having you on, and I appreciate you doing this. You've had a big season now as the A crew with Burkhardt. Let's just start with that. How's your? I mean, this is your second full year, I believe, doing this. You and Kevin obviously got bumped up with Joe and Troy with ESPN. How is your first year going, do you think, as the lead analyst for Fox?
I think it's done really well. I think it's been a blast. First and foremost, Kevin and I got put, when we got elevated to the A crew, we got put with just a great team. Obviously, Aaron and Tom have been a part of that team, especially Aaron for a long time. Her and Tom do such a great job, and then obviously our producers and directors, they've called million Super Bowls. This team is a very highly, highly successful, experienced group. So especially for somebody like myself to be put with, a team of people that have called the biggest games with the biggest audiences, for 20 plus years, it just brings so much experience and so much knowledge and expertise to someone who admittedly is still learning the industry. As you mentioned, it's only my second full year, calling the slates of games here on Fox since I've retired. And, every week I feel like I learn something new, but at the end of the day, I think we have fun. I think our broadcast comes across that way. We have a blast being together on the weekends. And it's just been a fun work environment. Everyone gets along. Everyone's really enjoyed each other. It feels like a kind of a fresh start for a lot of people. And, I know Kevin and I are, thrilled to be in those chairs. And, I think the ratings, the reviews, the people that have watched, I think everything's been positive. So we're going to try to keep that going here as we approach the playoffs.
I'm curious because I've talked so much on this podcast, and I've had all the players on basically about how insane the offseason was with the broadcasters switching networks and getting elevated and all that. And you're in an interesting boat because, like we've said, this is only your second full season. So, all those people who've moved around have been around for so long and ended up getting big money. I'm just curious. So, let me start with this. When you found out or heard that Troy was going to leave and go to ESPN, was your thought, oh, I want that gig? Or did you think, I've only done it one full year, they might not give it to me? What was your thought for your own personal situation when you heard Troy was leaving?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wanted it. There's no question. When all the rumors and speculation, started towards the end of last season, through the playoffs, and there was some reports that, Troy might be leaving for Amazon or he might do a coat, so there was all those speculation and rumors and whatnot. And, it's hard. You don't want to get wrapped up in too much of it just because you never know how much of it is truth and how much of it is just kind of story and rumor. So, as things became more real and it was finally announced that Joe and Troy were both going to leave to go to ESPN and do Monday night, of course I wanted it, right? I thought I could do it. I thought it'd make sense to elevate Kevin and I. We worked together, not just last year, but we have a long history together. We did a couple games while I was still playing as a member of his crew. So, yeah, I think anybody that has any sort of pride or value would be like, hell yeah, I want the job. I don't want it to be given to somebody else. Just elevate us and we'll do a great job, right? And but the reality was it wasn't my decision to make. It wasn't something that I was really consulted on. So we didn't really know, for a good part of the offseason exactly how things were going to settle and how things were going to end up. Of course, then the Brady news gets released and it gets reported that Tom's in agreement with them to do it at some point. We don't know what that is. so I didn't know what that meant for me. So really, it was just an off season of, speculation and trying to be patient and understand that there's a lot of moving parts that, Fox and the team that, gets paid to make all these hard decisions are sorting through all the different scenarios. And we understood that. We know what we signed up for. This is nothing new. This is very similar to, my playing career, where you're sometimes at the mercy of other factors. And if you get too wrapped up in those, you can drive yourself crazy.
I would imagine what had to feel really good for you. I mean, listen, if anybody in any sport gets bumped up from the two crew to the one crew in their second year, I mean, that's a pretty impressive jump and sort of show of confidence from the network. I thought what was really interesting about the fact that Fox did that with you, if you would have told me, Troy's leaving, they're going to make Greg Olsen the number one analyst, I would say, okay, I get it. He's, everyone has been high on Greg, and Fox, wants their own guy doing that. And I thought the only thing that maybe could be sort of a little bit of a deterrent there was Fox having the Super Bowl. And would they want someone in their second full year doing the Super Bowl? And they still gave you the gig. So that I would assume that was a sort of a big confidence booster for you. Am I right about that? The fact that you're getting to do the Super Bowl this year as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the fact that they're trusting, us to host the biggest sporting event in the world, speaks volumes about obviously how they feel our crew did last year. We had a chance to call some primetime games towards the end of the year on some Saturday nights, some Thursday night gigs that were in front of larger audience, more national audience. And I think that was really like an opportunity for more people to see us versus just the 1 o'clock slate on Sunday afternoons, on those double headers or whatnot. So I think towards the end of the year, I think we showed them that, I might be new at this, but alongside Kevin and with the rest of our group, we can make games fun. We can make games maybe a little different and more, a little different than what people are accustomed to, and give people a little different perspective. I mean, listen, the reality of this entire thing is the hesitation and the knock and, the questions about whether or not I was going to be promoted from A to B and can he handle it and blah, blah, blah. If I played quarterback, I don't think any of this would be a conversation, right? It's just the reality of it. It's a quarterback driven position, especially of late. I get that, but I feel my experience playing the position that I did for as long as I did, and the way I learned the game, the way I've been around the game, leads to a different broadcast, right? We're talking about different things than just a guy throwing it and catching it, and I feel like people have come to like that. I think people that tune in to our games come to expect a little bit of a different, analysis, and I don't shy away from that, right? I'm not a quarterback. I didn't, but that's okay. I have a unique set of perspective of how I've learned the game, how I've seen the game. I would argue tight end, maybe more so than any position on the team, was taught and learned, and we studied the game from all different unique perspectives, from pass protection to offensive line meetings to route running to quarterback styles to defense coverages, fronts, blitzes. There was very little, other than the quarterback, no other position that learned the game like we did. So I think that is a little bit of the hesitation that people have, like completely accepting the fact that a non-quarterback is going to sit in the top booth and call the Super Bowl. But it is what it is.
As quarterbacks get all the perks.
Yeah, I get it. It comes with the territory.
So let me, I want to ask you a couple of questions about getting into it, because I remember being sort of blown away that you had done games for Fox while you were still playing. It was something I don't think we've seen before. When did you, and you had a great career as a tight end. When did you realize you wanted to get into broadcasting and get into the booth?
I don't think it was really ever a conscious decision. I don't think it was ever a moment in time where I said, what, when I'm done, I'm going to call games. Really just opportunities as a player, both starting like regionally and locally here in Charlotte, doing some different TV stuff and getting some different opportunities. And then it was like 2014-15. I was out in the summer. I was out in LA visiting a buddy, and the folks at Fox were like, hey, why don't you come into the studio and call a rehearsal game? Prior to that, I had done some studio stuff, both, regionally on some, Fox Sports South and, some of the CBS shows, like the pre-show, like on my bye week. So I'd done some small level stuff over the years. And then Fox brought me in. They said, hey, why don't you come to a, kind of in studio, call a game as like an audition tryout. It was with Kevin Burkhardt, which was awesome. And So that was like 2014, 15 summer, sometime around then. And it went well. They liked it. And then a year or two later, they called in the summer leading into the 2017 season and said, hey, we have a really unique opportunity. We'd like to bring you into the booth with Kevin and Charles Davis at the time was his partner and make it a 3-man booth. And if you're open to it on a bye week, would you be open to doing that? I said, hell yeah, I'd love that opportunity. So I did that in 2017. That was my first like real game. And then 2019, they gave me another opportunity to put me in a 2-man booth, and I did a game with Kenny Albert. And then in 2020, prior to my last season, right before the pandemic hit, I called 5 weeks of the XFL, me and Kevin did, which was my first real experience of calling games week after week, continuously. So we called 5 games, and then the league shut down and the world went into a global pandemic. So that was my last taste. I played my last year there in 2020 in Seattle, and then obviously moved into the booth full-time last year with the B crew with Kevin.
Well, do you remember a moment? So you said when you were playing, you didn't really think about going in the booth. Did you ever have a moment, whether it was doing the practice games with Kevin, XFL, when you were doing it, where like maybe a light went off and you're like, oh, I want to do this. This is cool. I like doing this. Yeah.
I think doing the 2017 game opened my eyes to how much I enjoyed calling the game. Prior to that, everything had been in studio, and that's what everyone's accustomed to seing. The reality is there's more people who can do studio than can call games. That's what I've come to realize from just, I've been on the Monday countdown, the Monday night, not Monday night, but the Sunday NFL countdown with ESPN. I did some stuff for the Super Bowls a couple years and been in studio with Fox, and those jobs are a blast, right? To talk general about the landscape of the league and different storylines and topics was a blast, but it was really the studying and the week in, week out, the grind of calling the games and learning the players that I felt would keep me connected to a game that I've known since I was a kid. And that was really that 2017 experience with Kevin and Charles, the way they brought me into the booth. Charles was incredible. Just the way he treated me, the way he, took care of me, and he was just wonderful. And then obviously I knew Kevin for a long time, so he was great. So that was really when I said, you know what, I can do this. Like this isn't that hard. Like I can do this. I can talk ball. I can make it fun. We can have a great time. It's work. It's studying and whatnot. But that 2017 experience was probably the moment where the light bulb went off, and I said, you know what, this is something that I could do. If I pursued this, I think I could, kind of make a second career out of it.
I remember there was a lot of buzz about you too, about this guy's going to be good. This guy's going to be good in the booth. And obviously it's worked out tremendously. I like what you said earlier about giving a different perspective, calling games as a tight end, because most of the analysts are quarterbacks. I'm just curious. So I think that's a huge strength. What would you say you need to improve upon? I mean, you've only been doing this for 2 years, so obviously you probably have some stuff you think you can do better, or maybe you want to do differently. What would you like to, get better at doing games?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that I know I need to improve at. Even just some of the technical processes of, the cameras and what they're called and the communication to the booth. A lot of that stuff I'm still kind of learning. And I joke with, our producer and director, Rich Russo and Richie Zions. They've been calling Super Bowls for a long time. I have a kind of a running joke, like the game hasn't started until Richie Zions, our producer, until he tells me to like keep my thoughts down. So like first couple plays of the game, now it's become like a tradition. He'll get in my ear and just be like, remember to slow down. My problem is, and this was also something when I was a player, you see so much that you find interesting, right? On any given play, it could be a 25-yard pass completion down the middle, right? That the easy thing to point out is great throw by, Patrick Mahomes, and what a great catch by Travis Kelce. And I'm always in the belief like, yeah, no shit. Like everyone at home saw that. Everyone knows that. Like what element to why that was a good play can you provide the audience? The problem is, do you want to pick like what they did to the coverage? Do you want to find the back who did a great job in pass protection? You want to show the job that the offensive line did sliding to Micah Parsons, who's the best pass rusher? There are so many aspects to why plays are or are not successful. And sometimes when you see 3 or 4 of them, I need to be better. Just pick one. And if you don't get your second most important thought, you have the entire rest of the game to share that with the viewer when it becomes, when it's relevant again. So like, those are the things I'm so excited about the game of football. It's something that I've lived and breathed and done my whole life. that I want everyone else to like really enjoy it and learn and share. But you also don't get to just talk over the entire broadcast, right? It's not the Manning cast where everyone's there to listen to you. You have to talk in spurts and get out of the way for your partner. So that's part of what I have to do is like, hey, pick one great thought, even though you might have 4, and you can come back to the other ones as the game goes on. So that's something that I'm in a constant battle with myself to not go information overload.
And it seems like you and Kevin had chemistry right from the beginning. It didn't seem like you guys had to work too much on I mean, listen, I don't even know if I'm not sure chemistry is something you either work on. I mean, I think either you have it or you don't. You guys seem to really be a good fit together. So did that start? I mean, you mentioned doing that practice game with Kevin. Was it smooth sailing right from then on, or did that really start when you did a full season last year? When do you think you and Kevin sort of perfectly meshed together like you do now?
Well, I mean, I've known Kevin for a long time, well before that rehearsal game, back in 15 or whatever it was. I knew Kevin when I was in high school. I knew Kevin. He worked. He went to a college in my hometown. He was, a young broadcaster, kind of up and comer, calling high school football games for the local AM radio station in New Jersey. And he would come to my high school and he would come cover our games. So, I mean, I've known Kevin since I was 15, 16 years old. We had stayed in touch loosely throughout the years. And of course, when he joined Fox full time as an analyst, he would, call my games and we kind of reconnected, later on in our lives. But there was just always a connection. We're from the same part of Jersey back home. We've known each other for a long time, called that rehearsal game, then went into the booth with him with Charles. So we just have a long history together. We know each other. We know where we're from. We kind of have shared values and we just get along. Like we get along off off camera. And I think that's so important and something that we've really just enjoyed. Like we always say, like, if we're going to do all this and we're going to spend all this time together and work together, you might as well like the people you're doing it with, or it's going to be a long year. Yeah. We're living in hotels and we're in production meetings and we're on calls and talk. If it's a grind to be around these people day in and day out, you're going to make for a miserable person to work with. And the reality is you're not going to be very good at your job because it's going to affect it in some capacity. So I'm very fortunate that Kevin and I and the entire crew, I mean, Aaron and Tom, I obviously have gotten to know them more closely this year as a result of working together. But it's just a fun group to work with. And obviously Kevin, it starts and stops with him and just his personality and the way he is. So I'm very grateful for that. It's definitely made this transition a whole lot easier versus working with someone that you have no prior history with.
Yeah, for sure. I had Kevin on this podcast, I don't know, it was either 2 or 3 weeks ago. And you mentioned the Brady deal at Fox. And Kevin shared a funny story about that. I'm going to play a little clip of it right now to hear, so you can hear what Kevin said. I had asked him about, obviously Brady has this deal with Fox to come into the booth. You have the job. And you guys have done Bucs games, and I asked Kevin about the first time you have your meeting with Brady this season, given the sort of elephant in the room. So we're going to play that clip now so you can hear what Kevin had to say about that. Shelby, if you could play it.
I can tell you one thing. On some of the other stuff, I'll leave with us. But like it was, just when we came on, and they know each other.
Right.
But when we came on, we're just shooting the shit at first, and like you usually do before you actually start these meetings. And Greg said, and hopefully he doesn't mind me saying this, but Greg said, Tom, I got to tell you, this TV thing sucks. It's just, it's so, but it was great. We were dying laughing.
So I know Kevin, I know that story is accurate. He wouldn't come on and make that up. So give me your perspective on that first meeting with Tom and that icebreaker that you gave him.
It is a true story. It is a true story. And we had joked, Kevin and I had joked, leading up to that first Bucs game. I think we had him, I want to say like early. I mean, it was really early in the season. God, the games all blur together. I want to say it was like week 2, maybe week, 2 or 3, whatever it was. Yeah. And we had joked like, you think Brady, like, what do we say to him? Like, obviously everyone knows that he potentially could come, work for Fox and it's my job. And, we were just kind of joking around about the thing. So it wasn't really anything like pre-planned, and it kind of came up and he's asking how we're doing. And, again, like Kevin said, we're just kind of shooting the shit, just kind of small talk and breaking the ice. And I was like, Tom, this TV shit sucks. Like you don't even worry about it. I'll handle it. I'll deal with all the bullshit. You just keep playing, go be a model, do whatever you got. You have 1,000 things you could do. And he got a kick out of it, and we laughed. I don't know Tom really well. I mean, I know him. We've crossed paths, obviously, playing against each other a bunch of times over the years. And we had some dialogue back in 2020 about potentially, going to play with him when he was a free agent and I had gotten released by the Panthers. So we've had some relationship over the years, nothing overly personal, or away from the game at all. But he's obviously someone that I have immense respect for and someone that I feel very strongly and hold in high regard. So it was a fun moment. He laughed. It was a kind of a fun kind of icebreaker. Like you said, it was the elephant in the room. Everyone was thinking it. Everyone knows it. And, I haven't shied away from it. It's not something that I hide from. It's not something that intimidates me or makes me feel, uncomfortable. It is what it is, right? I mean, I get it. And would I have loved to get the job for the next 10 years? Of course. But do I understand that when, you have a chance to do something with Tom Brady, you have to at least pursue it and take a shot at it? Of course, I get it. I told the team at Fox when, we talked all this out and they were super transparent and upfront. They were great. I said, you know what, guys, here's my goal. I hope next year after the Super Bowl, I hope the conversations internally, I said this in jest, right? Like they're like, I said, I hope that it's like, damn, I can't believe we have to replace Olsen. I said, and if I do that, you replace me, I go back down to my old team, great. Tom Brady becomes the A crew. I get it. It sucks, but I get it. And it's not going to take away from how I prepare. It's not going to take away from how I try to do my job. And I'll go try to do a great job next year and make it even harder on you guys. Like I said, that's just my mentality. That's how I was raised as a player. Someone comes in to take your job, fine, bench me, but I'm going to make it hard as shit on you to bench me. That, and again, it's nothing personal against Tom. I have no animosity towards Fox. Like, Fox has treated me incredibly well. I've said that time and time again. I would not be in this position if it wasn't for Fox believing in me 5-6 years ago to give me a shot like they did, to call a game when no one had ever seen me do it. Fox believed in me more than any other network. Some of the other networks, we kind of danced and there was some interest, but nobody liked Fox. So I have nothing but positives to say about my entire experience with the people at Fox. I hope I work with them for the next 20 years. I just hope it's with the A crew.
I've said on this podcast, and I probably have written this in my column. I when this whole thing came down, I thought it was sort of super weird and shitty for you. But I said, if it was, let me rephrase that. If it was anyone else that Fox was going to bring in, I think it would be super shitty for you and weird. But when Fox is bringing in the greatest quarterback of all time, it's like, what are you supposed to do? You can't blame them for doing it. So you're in a weird spot from sort of and it's not just the greatest quarterback of all time. He's also this personality outside of football. So it just all makes sense for Fox. It just, of course,
if I was them, I'd do the same thing.
Right.
I get it, right? Like, we all have to live in reality. And I think sometimes people choose not to live in reality. I am very clear on what I signed up for. I'm very clear on how this world works. I've lived it for 20 years. I get it. And it doesn't make me uncomfortable. It doesn't make me resentful. I have nothing but appreciation for all the opportunities. If this is the only Super Bowl I ever call, I still got to call Super Bowl and have a blast for a year and call some of the most highly rated games in NFL history. Like, what do I have to complain about?
Well, and it also, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. They'd keep you there and make it a 3-person booth, which, I mean, on one hand, as just a viewer, I hate 3-man booth, but I would get why they would do that, because if they like you, you're good at your job, Tom hasn't done it before, it might make sense to, put him in there as a 3-person. Have you thought about the possibility of that?
We haven't, to be honest with you, we have been so kind of locked in on calling this slate of games. We got 4 more games until the playoffs, and, some of them are going to be huge. We got Dallas this week down in Jacksonville. And then next week we could have potentially the game of the year. Philly, Dallas, Christmas Eve, national game. That could be like another Thanksgiving type game, as far as the platform and whatnot. So like, we've been so in this week in, week out grind of just trying to continue to put a good product out there. We've had some tough games the last couple of weeks where like we've really had to earn our money and like keep the game alive. Last week's game, Tampa was down 28-0 at halftime. First part of the third quarter, McCaffrey scores again. The 49ers are up 35-0. So like, we've had some games go both ways, good and bad. So as far as what the future holds and how the booth is set up and how Tom, to be honest with you, I don't really spend a lot of time. I'm sure this offseason, that'll be more of the focus of the conversation and more of the focus of my energy. But right now we got 4 regular season games left. We're hoping that every one of these has playoff implications. Every one of these is super exciting and comes down to the wire. And then I've never called a playoff game. So that first week, that wild card game, wherever we are, whoever we're playing, whoever we're doing, it's going to be the first time I'm ever calling a game in a playoffs. And then the next week will be the first time I ever do it in divisional. And each week it'll be first time. So I'm excited for that journey. I'm excited about what these next 2 months, bring to the table. And I'm going to enjoy it while we have it and make the most of it. And I'm not going to try to waste a lot of my energy and time, worrying about hypotheticals, because as we've all seen, every time everyone thinks they know what's going to happen, something new happens. So no one's been able to predict the future of this whole kind of musical chairs for the last year. And I don't know if I sure as hell ain't going to be able to do it now,
The week before Kevin was on, Joe Buck was on this podcast, and he said he wouldn't be surprised if Brady never did a game at Fox, and it caused a big stir out there in the aggregation world of the internet. So maybe Joe will be right, and you'll be with Kevin as the A team forever. And there you go.
Who knows?
I was going to ask you. You brought up going to Dallas to do the Dallas-Jacksonville game, and you've got Dallas-Philly. I wanted to get into a couple of scheduling things with you, because this has been a big topic throughout the season with the schedule, because Thursday night's been terrible. Monday night's going to be really bad here for a few weeks. Sunday 425 is usually always a good game, but you've mentioned a couple of bumps in the road last couple of weeks. It was fascinating to me to see that they were sending you and Kevin to Jacksonville. Now, listen, I get it. Get the Cowboys in front of the most people in the country at all times, and the A crew always covers the Cowboys. But Dallas-Jacksonville is you don't see the A crew of CBS or Fox in Jacksonville too often, and then you get Dallas the next week. Now, the Dallas-Philly game, you were supposed to do a game on Christmas Day, right? And they pulled you off that, and they're putting you on Dallas-Philly. How do you feel now you get your Christmas Day back? Was that a nice perk there, or you didn't care about that?
I was, when the schedule came out and we were going to do a Christmas Day game, it was going to be Green Bay down at Miami. I don't know if anyone, I know for a fact, no one anticipated the season going, at least on Green Bay side, the way it's gone, at least up to this point. And then Miami being one of the sneaky, most exciting teams in the league. I thought people think they were going to be good. I don't know if people thought they necessarily first year Mike McDaniel and Tua and all that, they would be this fun to watch and this exciting. I know last week they kind of laid an egg against the Chargers, but I think when they kind of looked at it, so I guess I was excited about calling the game, going back down to Miami, calling the game on Christmas. It was going to be a great experience. But then when the whispers started coming that Christmas Eve Philly Cowboys game, and especially as both teams continue to win, Philly's got the best record in the league. The Cowboys are the Cowboys, plus they're really good. I think we always knew if they could somehow figure out how to finagle that they would get us off and put us on Christmas Eve. And then we found out a couple weeks ago that it was official, that they were able to work out exactly what the details of how all that works out. I'm not privy to, but I think from a football perspective, from a audience perspective, it just makes sense, right? It makes sense to call two of the top teams, not only in the league, two of the premier organizations in the entire league. Anytime you can get the Cowboys in a meaningful game, of course. And then that game could have significant playoff implications. And, all of us are like crossing our fingers that neither team lays an egg before next week's big matchup. You want them both going in, full steam. So we're excited for that, but I'm excited to go down and see Jacksonville. We have never called a Jacksonville game, even last year. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence is playing really well, but diving into them this year and seeing a lot of the new players that they have and, names that you've recognized, but you're used to seeing them in other jerseys. Now they've kind of resurfaced down in Jacksonville, and Doug Peterson kind of coming in and doing what he does, which is stabilize foundations and grow them and become winners. So there's a lot of fun storylines with Jacksonville. They're young, they're talented, they have some good players. And obviously, we see Dallas a lot. So that's a team that we know, and we'll have, I'm assuming we'll get them a few more times before this year is over.
I wonder, since I have you here, I did want to ask some football questions outside of broadcasting, just because you have played so recently. And I love talking to current players or players who have just played, just for some perspective on a couple of things. I'm curious, you mentioned you guys did the Bucs-Niners game last week. Video came out during the week afterwards of a bunch of Niners players going up to Tom after the game, asking for autographs, asking for pictures, signing a jersey. I know he's the GOAT. I got all that. And I know he's, like I said, he's a celebrity even outside of football, but it did strike me a little, I don't want to say weird. That's a little strong, but I mean, it is an opposing player. You've just played a game, maybe because the Niners, I mean, if the Niners lost, I guess maybe it would be a bigger issue, but as a player, is that totally normal? Would you not want teammates to do that? What's your take on that? I'm just curious.
I think the point you made about at least they won the game is a big differentiator. I think if they had lost and I watched a teammate go up and get an autograph signed by the guy who just kicked our ass, I'd be furious. So first and foremost, the fact that you beat them, I think the final was like 35-7 or whatever the final score was. That helps, right? At least we beat them soundly. We played well. Okay, fine. I personally would not do that. It's just not my thing. I feel like out there on the field, you're obviously respectful. Everyone appreciates Tom, or whether it's Peyton Manning or whoever it is. It doesn't matter who it is. You always appreciate and respect greatness when you see it. And that's the epitome of greatness, obviously, with Tom. I just feel like when we're all out there on the field and we're all in the, in our uniforms and we're all playing by the same rules, and you can't approach and treat other people as being different than you, because I feel like then they win. Right. So like in my mind, I would not personally do it. If my teammate did it or whatever, like, I'm not going to, when he comes in the locker room, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. It's not my style. But listen, for a lot of these young kids and a lot of these guys, probably the last time they ever play against him, he's a guy they've grown up, and he's been the god of the NFL for so long, for almost their entire lives for a lot of these kids. So I get it. I get it. But I think some of that, I even saw it happening live from the booth, and I was like, yeah, interesting. Like, it's a little I understand guys going up and shaking hands and saying, great job, I respect you, appreciate what you've done. Yeah, I get all that, but
they were the Niners players were mic'd up, so you hear them saying, "Hey, can you sign my jersey, bro?" And
I get it. I don't know. It's a different. I try not to be like the old man who says, things are different now than when I was a player. So I try not to like pass my perspective as a 38-year-old ex-player on these young 20-something-year-olds who they're living in a different world. They're living in a different ecosystem. The NFL is very different than it was when I was 25. So I try not to like pass judgment on how other people choose to live. Like I said, thankfully they won. Thankfully it was all in a fun moment for the 49ers. But that's not really my style, but to each their own, I guess.
Well, and that's the flip side of it. So I'm watching the video, and one guy asked Brady to sign his jersey. The guy who intercepted the ball, Greenlaw wanted him to sign the ball. Another guy's asking for a bit. And I'm like, there was a part of me that was a little amazed Tom didn't just say fuck off and walk off the field.
I'm shocked that Tom signed the interception ball. I'll be honest. He's a lot better of a man than me, because Dre Greenlaw is a phenomenal player, first and foremost.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have signed that ball. I'm sorry. I just wouldn't. I would have said, hey, Dre, listen, brother, you're a hell of a dude. You're a great player. Hell of a pick. One hand. You're great. I'm not signing the pick.
Right. And what's interesting is...
And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I just wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. And Tom's gotten so much shit throughout his career because he hasn't shaken hands with some players. And Ryan Fitzpatrick called him out this year because he said, and now here's Tom taking pictures and signing jerseys and balls.
It was interesting.
After ass kicking.
After a flat out ass kicking. And I guess... And I heard Dre Greenlaw's he goes, hey, the worst thing he could have said is no. So like, listen,
he's got a good philosophy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what's he going to say? No. Okay. You go back in the locker room and you gave it a shot. He didn't say no. So now he has a memento for the rest of his career. He can show his kids, listen, in potentially the last season, if not one of the last seasons in Tom Brady's career, I picked him off and I got him to sign the ball after the game. So credit to him. I don't knock any of the guys for doing it. I personally wouldn't do it, but everyone does their thing.
The other thing I wanted to ask you were a great tight end for many years, and there's a lot of talk this year about tight ends because of Travis Kelce. Who do you think is the greatest tight end of all time?
Well, I said this on a broadcast a couple weeks ago, and people lost their minds, but that's okay. The current trajectory of what Travis has done, I think, barring something unforeseen, which I couldn't knock on wood harder because I don't ever want to see anyone, let alone a guy who's put a career like this, have something derail it. But the trajectory in which he's on, if he can, and people said this 4 years ago, can he keep it up? Well, history tells us if anyone can keep it up, it's him. And if he puts another couple years together like he has, I think Travis goes down as the best. What he's doing, I know Tony kind of sits out there 15,000 yards or whatever it is, and that's like a number that to all of us growing up was unfathomable. Like you couldn't even process the idea of having 15,000 yards. Travis has had 7 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons.
Yeah.
7. Not to toot my own horn, but back in 2016, I became the first guy to do it 3 times in a row.
Right.
He's done it 7 times. It's unheard of. The next closest guy not in consecutive is 4. A couple guys have had 4,000 yards. I think Gronk's had 4. Right. Maybe Witten had 4.
Antonio Gates
might have 4. So like a handful of the household names have had 4. A couple guys had 3. And then guys have had a scattered year here and there with 1,000. But to go 7, let alone 7 in a row, is ridiculous. He just crossed 10,000 yards. I mean, I think Travis's current trajectory is only a couple years away from him going down as the best. And then as far as who that other category, of course, Gonzalez is always in the conversation. Gronk, the Wittens in the world, I don't think get appreciated enough, like his consistency year in and year out. I mean, he's got 13,000 yards or something crazy. So I think there's a lot of those household names that are all in that mix.
It's weird to me, and I'm not saying this to kiss your ass because you're on, but like I feel like tight ends don't get enough respect, even from teams. Like here in New York, for example, I follow the Jets closely. I'm not a fan, but I follow. They've never had a good tight end. They don't care about having a good tight end. We're seeing the Dolphins this year, who have a very good tight end. I think he's gotten 4 catches the whole season. Like, why would teams just totally not want to go all in on having a good tight end? I don't get it. What do you think that's about?
I don't necessarily think it's that they don't want one. I think that people think it's easier to find them than they are. Like there's everyone would, Travis, teams would kill themselves to get Travis Kelce or George Kittle or Gronk. And like teams do backflips to get these guys. The reality is there's just not a lot of them, right? There's just not a lot of 6'5", 250-pound guys that can run around and hold up in the run game and be explosive pass catchers and have the footwork and the mental approach to be able to line up in 5 different positions throughout the course of the game and handle blitz pickups and run game assignments and pass routes and adjustments and hots. Like it's a mentally and physically very demanding position. So there's just not a lot of guys that can do it. Right. And then the next difference between the Kelce's of the world and the Kittle, there's a higher learning of playing the position that you can't coach. You can't bring a guy in and say, okay, I'm going to teach you how to play like Travis Kelce. There's a lot of 6'5" guys, right? But can they play the way Kelce does? Do they have the feel? Do they find space? Do they have the hands, the run after catch? Like you can't coach that stuff. So like there's so few and far between that I think every team that's successful, I think if you look around the league at the best teams over the last 5-6 years, almost every team that's in the Super Bowl has one of the top tight ends. Almost all the best offense in the league have one of the top tight ends. It's a position that everybody wants. It's just not a position that everybody can find at that level. And, you're seeing it with Tampa right now. I think, they got a couple of decent kids. They're young, they're learning, but they're not Gronk, right? It's just, there's not, everyone says, we just got to replace them. Who? With who? They're not just a dime a dozen out there. So I think that's a big part of it. If you told the Jets that tomorrow they could have Travis Kelce or George Kittle or Darren Waller, they'd cut off their arm for him. It's not that they don't want them. It's that it's not that easy to find them.
Right. Well, the Jets have proven that's for sure, because they never have a good tight end.
I thought the Jets were going to draft me back in 2007. They drafted some guy named Darrelle Revis. I don't know what happened to him.
Well, still better he didn't come to the Jets.
He was fine. Darrelle Revis worked out okay.
Would you? Well, I mean, I didn't. I never knew. I did a little research for this interview. I didn't realize you were from New Jersey. For some reason, I always thought you were from the Charlotte area, which then I realized made no sense. And I realized you were from Jersey. So, being from Jersey, were you hoping the Jets would have drafted you?
Yeah, I thought I had a real shot to go to New York. I thought, coming out, I took one of my visits, like the pre-draft, whatever they call them, visits there. Mangini was the coach.
I was gonna say, okay. I was gonna ask.
Yeah,
if it was
Eric
Rex
Mangini.
Ryan okay.
Yeah, it was Eric Mangini was the coach. I'm trying to remember who the quarterback was. It might have been like Chad Pennington, maybe.
Yeah.
Would that have been right in 2007?
Probably.
I can't remember exactly who was there, but yeah. So I took my visit there. What happened was they were originally supposed to pick in like the 20s, and they traded up with the Panthers, coincidentally, and traded up because Revis fell. So I think if the Jets would have stayed in the 20s, I think I had a shot to somehow go there. They traded up to, I want to say, to like 13 when Revis fell out of the top 10, understandably so, drafted Revis and switched with the Panthers.
Got it. The last thing I wanted to ask you about football, we saw it this week with Micah Parsons saying some things about Jalen Hurts, about is it Jalen Hurts, is it the team? I know the media and fans, we love to use the phrase bulletin board material. I want to know as a player, is bulletin board material real? Is that a real thing with players?
I don't think it's a real thing with the players who are legit. I don't think you need to give Jason Kelce and Jalen Hurts and guys of that like competitive culture and that competitive fabric. I don't think you need to motivate them to go play their ass off in 2 weeks on Christmas Eve. You know what I mean? Like I just think the notion that professional athletes who are inherently highly competitive, they need some headline in a newspaper or some tweet to get them to go out there. I wanted to win, but I really want to win now. Like, I think that's a lot of nonsense. Now, do I think some people are externally motivated and do kind of ride with the wind of what people say and do and care? Yeah, I feel like that's a big part of our current culture of our world. I think it's a big current culture of young players in the NFL. I think everyone is so worried about what everyone says about them that it's almost like all encompassing and consuming. But I think to the real teams like Philly, like Dallas, the teams that are just week in and week out, highly, highly competitive with really big time players on their team, those guys are not going to play any harder if Micah Parsons said Jalen Hurts is the MVP or if Jalen Hurts sucks. Jalen Hurts is going to come out there and try to slit his throat. And Jason Kelce is going to come out there and try to slit their throat. You know what I mean? Like they're going to come out there and try to kill them and win that game, regardless of whether you say nice things about them or shitty things about them.
Right.
So I think a lot of that is a little bit of hype. I think a little bit of that is media driven. Yeah. When that ball is kicked off and it's all time, every single guy on that field is giving every ounce of their body and effort to try to be successful to win that game, with or without comments from the other team.
You mentioned a couple of seconds ago about caring about what other people think. Just curious, what your philosophy is with Twitter. Do you check your mentions? Do you maybe wait a few days after a game to check your mentions? What are is it mostly positive? How do you handle that part of the broadcasting world?
Yeah, I'll tell you, if you enter the broadcasting, this is like a public service announcement for anyone who gets into anything on television. If you enter the world of television, you better not care what other people think, because if you do, you're done. It will crush your soul. You could be the best. If John Madden called games today on Twitter, people would still crush him.
Absolutely.
So like
100%.
you can't worry about what other people said. Yeah, tweets get back to me. I'm on Twitter. You see people that retweet you or comment at you. Yeah, it does not give me 1 ounce of concern. The only people that I care whose opinion, I care about my team. I care about Kevin and Aaron and Tom and Richie and Russo, like the people within my team that say, I tell them, I say, hey, listen, if there's something I need to do better or different, I need you to tell me because I don't know what I don't know. So like, if those people are happy with how everything's going and my bosses at Fox give positive response and feedback, like those are the people whose opinion matter. And as we all know, right now, we're in a world where everyone's opinion matters to a lot of people. Right. And I just really try to stay out of that world. Like early on, my first couple games, you're damn right. I would check Twitter and say, well, do people think I'm good? Do people think I'm bad? But now I'm like, people think I'm good. People think I'm bad. People think my suit's the wrong color. People think my hair's not combed. People think I look like Dexter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, now, whatever. Yeah, that one's true at least. I mean, I see that.
Yeah, that I get. People aren't good. Listen, Twitter's funny. people are very funny. I mean, there's some jokes that are at my disposal that people like my buddies will send to me and stuff, and like I'll laugh. Like I'm not too good to like laugh at a funny joke about myself. Like I think a lot of them are really good, but as far as my ability to do the job, the reality is like people outside the industry, people outside of this profession, or my bosses directly, or really those are the only voices who I really take into account and really care about any feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
but it's easier said than done, right? We're all human.
I've always said the only broadcaster I've ever seen, the only broadcaster who I've never seen a negative word about is Vince Scully. Outside of that, everyone gets destroyed.
Yeah, it's just a different day and age now, right? Like, you know, if
you also have, I mean, besides Twitter, there's also people who cover, dopes like me who cover the media who are writing things too. And I wouldn't pay, if I were you, I wouldn't pay attention to that either.
Well, you only write great things about me, right? That's why I'm on this podcast.
I think I've only written one negative thing about you the whole season.
And what was it? Let's get it out in the open right now.
You need to be a little harder on the refs. That's my big
harder
beef.
On the refs?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, give me an example.
Green Bay, Dallas. There was an atrocious PI call late. You said it was a good call. And then there was a call.
It was a PI. Did they call the PI or they didn't?
It was
call
late.
The PI?
They called PI and it wasn't. And Dallas. And then there was a non-call. What was the non? There was a non-call right after that. And it was sort of.
So oftentimes, I'll give you my opinion of rules and how to analyze rules. There's two ways to do it. You can either just say every penalty has to be by the letter of the law. There's no context. There's no ability to see, anything other than black and white. It is the letter of the law. It is context. That is what the rule book says, and that's how you're I don't personally buy into that. Like,
right.
In my opinion, there is interpretation. I played the game for 15 years. We're lying to ourselves if we think every official out there is calling the game by the letter of the law 100% of the time as the rule book states. They're not. They're human. There's time in the game. There's situation. There's how many penalties have I called on. That's all being taken into account whether people want to accept that or not. These are human beings making human being decisions that are very subjective and a lot of the times. So when I'm seeing a call, when I'm seeing a flag, a no flag, if they call pass interference and when you super slow-mo it, that guy's got his hand on his jersey, but he's not really tugging them and all that. Like, I'm going to say, listen, I know he might have grabbed his jersey. I know, but that's not PI, because if that's PI, they missed 10.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? So like, sometimes you end up agreeing with the officials and oftentimes you don't end up agreeing with the officials. But I think to be just overly, so let's take the call. It wasn't my game, but the big roughing the passer call in that game last week that's gotten all that.
I was just going to bring that up. Yeah.
I think it was the Dolphins, right?
Chargers, Dolphins.
Yeah. The Dolphins sacked Herbert.
Yep.
Okay. So I watched that game. I didn't hear what anybody said. I was in an airport watching it. By the letter of the law, like if I was calling that game, it's not the referee's fault. The referee called it like it's written in the rule book. You cannot land with your body weight on top of the quarterback as you take them to the ground. It's a stupid rule. It's a ridiculous rule. It was made in a conference room by people trying to really be cute and specific. That's impossible for these refs to officiate correctly. So the guy throws the flag. By the letter of the law, that is a penalty. But by all of us having a brain and knowing football and seeing it, you can't call that penalty.
Right.
But which side do you take?
Well, I would play devil's advocate this way. I would say this. If the ref didn't throw the flag there, nobody would say a word. He wouldn't get criticized by one person, except maybe the Chargers head coach.
But should the officials officiate the game worried about the reaction on Twitter?
No, they shouldn't do it. No, they should not do that. But I think there, like you said it well. There needs to be some sort of context or common sense or, letter of the law that you're going to get. He got way more. That ref got destroyed for throwing the flag. If he didn't throw the flag, you wouldn't have got one piece of criticism. So that tells me don't throw the flag. But
What tells me is it's a bad rule.
Oh, it's a terrible rule. Terrible.
If throwing the flag in by the letter of the law, which is what he did, to me, I'm not going to shoot the messenger. Right, he's officiating the game the way he was told to officiate the game. That were rules that were made that he was not privy to the conversations of how they were made.
Right.
The people who decided to make that roughing the passer spelled out in the rule book, he had nothing to do with that. Right. So my thing is, if it does cause this much controversy and every single person watching it with their eyeballs says that's not roughing the passer, it's a bad rule.
Right.
It's 100%. Stupid rule, and the rule needs to be re-examined. It's not the time, though, to annihilate the official. That's why unless it's just reckless and just brutal and negligent, and I'm just not a big shit on the officials guy, because oftentimes they're asked to officiate by letters of laws and rules that are damn near impossible for them to officiate.
Yes, yeah,
I lived it, and I see it. I saw it. I lived it my whole life.
Yeah, I want to see you shit on the refs. That's what I'm looking for.
I think that's easy. I think it's lazy. I think it's easy. You know what I mean?
What kills me is it's more about when there's a good game, close game, late, last 5 minutes, and then a call comes in and the game is altered by the call. That's when I think the refs need to be taken. Listen, they call a phantom holding in the first quarter. Okay, I don't expect anyone to go out there and kill the refs, but I feel like, I don't know, maybe they can't handle the pressure when it's late and close and they get nervous and I feel like a lot of them just want to get involved in the game for some reason. And
I think that's true, but I also think, like you just said, the phantom hold that they called in the first quarter, if they call that exact same one in a 2-minute drive at the end of the game, the hold is probably, if you cut out those plays and just put them in a vacuum, and you didn't show people the scoreboard, the time, how much, and you just showed the plays side by side, people probably wouldn't get up in arms.
Yeah.
They'd probably see it. If you said, hey, both these were called holds, what do you think?
Right.
And you just showed people with no scoreboard, no thing, people would go, okay, yeah, he grabbed his jersey and pulled him. If you said, hey, but this one called back the game-winning touchdown, this one made it 2nd and 12 in the first quarter. Which one's worse? Oh my God, it called back a touchdown? That's ridiculous. So we have the benefit of knowing the context of the outcome after the fact, of knowing how important every single call was to the game. And I get it. No one wants the games to come down to refs. But we have to give the refs opportunities to call plays and use rationale and use their brains and common sense. And I think we've made it so black and white that it's almost damn near impossible to officiate a game nowadays, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess too many games do come down to the refs with what they're doing late. But I appreciate you taking the criticism and discussing it. That's very, very big of you. But that's literally the only negative thing I've written. So I think we can move past it.
I wish I would have known. I wouldn't have come on the podcast. I'm just kidding. Well, I appreciate you.
I want to end with this. I've got to ask you, and I'm sure everyone wants to know how your son TJ is doing. We know he had a heart transplant last year. There was a video that I'm sure many people listening to this saw of TJ telling his siblings that he was getting that heart transplant, which just, if you saw that, it was just unbelievable. So give us an update. How's he doing?
He's doing great. Yeah, last June.
Awesome.
So we just celebrated this summer was his 1-year anniversary of his heart transplant. And he's doing awesome. He's in school. He's in 4th grade now. He has a twin sister who's also in 4th grade, and then an older brother who's in 5th. So he's doing great. He's in school. Just started playing for his school basketball team. First time he's ever played basketball. Basketball was always a little hard for him. He played baseball pretty much his whole life. That was a little more suited for his condition. And then since the transplant, he's really just improved his physical capabilities, his cardiovascular function. Wow. Just as you'd imagine, having an entire heart could help you a little bit. So for the first time in his life, he feels, quote unquote, normal. And so he's playing on his little basketball team. He goes to school, plays on a baseball team. He's active. He's doing awesome. If you saw him, talk to him, saw him run in the room right now, you would have no idea that he's been through what he's been through for 10 years of his life. So he's a great kid. I appreciate you asking, but yeah, he's doing great. And year 1 is always the hardest. And we hope he's got a lot of years left on this heart before we have to, see what the next step is.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, that was, like I said, anyone who saw that video, it's just, you want to know more about his story there and how he's doing. So I appreciate the update on that. Does he watch? Do all the kids? Do they watch you when you're doing a game? Do you get any feedback from the kids?
Sometimes, as long as it fits into their Sunday calendar, right? Their social schedule is very busy. They got practices and workouts, and I want to go to a friend's house. You know how that goes. So I think they watch a good amount of them. Sometimes they don't get them here. If it's the Panthers are playing at the same time, and whatever. But all in all, I think they watch a good amount. I think they enjoy it. I've taken each one of the kids on their own little weekend where they get to come sit with me in the booth and kind of see what I do while I'm gone and whatnot. So that's always fun to watch them pick out which stadiums they want to go to based on what players they think they can meet. But yeah, they watch it. I don't know how much they really care. I think they watched it more when I was playing.
Right.
But yeah, they enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and good luck the rest of the way with a lot of Cowboys. And then you got your first playoffs and then the Super Bowl, which should be thrilling. And, like I said, I enjoyed this, and thank you for coming on.
You got it. Thank you.
All right. Be well. Take care, Greg.
Take care.
All right. Joining me now, as he does every week for the Train of Thought segment right here on the SI Media Podcast from WFAN Radio in New York, SNY TV, my buddy Sal Licata. Sal, how's it going?
Great. Is it me, or is this segment becoming more and more popular by the week?
You bringing some star power. Deitch was praising it last week. It was crazy.
I don't get it. I mean, I was thinking about this today. I love doing this because life is so busy. Like, you and I don't get a chance to catch up as much anymore. So
we text. We just don't see. We text a lot. We just don't see each other in person as much.
Oh, right, but we used to, like, it's going into week 15. We haven't watched the football Sunday. We haven't been to steakhouse in forever. Remember, things have changed too. You're not working in the city anymore.
Right.
There's a lot of different things that we used to hang out a lot more, but this now gives us at least an excuse every week to hang out. So that's why it's fun for me.
I went into the city Saturday, took my nieces in. They wanted to go in.
God bless you.
I pulled a great power move, though. I got them out of going to the tree. We avoided that freaking tree.
How?
But my God, I mean, I'm staggering from the prices of everything on Long Island, and you go into the city. I spent $19.50 for 3 hot chocolates to start the day. Union Square holiday festival market thing. Yeah. And now me and my younger niece, we got regular hot chocolate. My older niece, she wanted the one. It was s'mores. So they're throwing marshmallows in and graham crackers, and they got a torch, and they're firing up the marshmallow, and and then I got to pay
hot chocolate. Come on.
And then we went to Black Tap Burgers. Black Tap, it's a burger place. It's like there's a few of them in the city. It's supposed to be a big deal. It was awful. And
I was gonna say, don't mention it. Don't say it. Oh.
And I had to pay. And then I paid $38 for 2 milkshakes.
By the way, did you get you do Realtree, right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So what did it run you this year? I just got mine last weekend.
I'm going to go this weekend. I haven't gone yet. I'm going this weekend.
Oh, all right. Yeah. So maybe next week we could discuss that. But goodness, be prepared.
I didn't go this past weekend because Saturday I was in the city all day and Sunday I was watching football. So I'm going to go this weekend. Right. But it's nice when college football's over. You get your Saturdays back. So went into the city and I just could not.
You get your Saturdays back. I still don't have mine because marriage and being a parent, that doesn't go away.
I'm talking about having to be in front of the TV.
I know what you're saying. I used to.
You don't even watch college football.
I used to. Why do you think I don't? You don't think I like the sport anymore? I used to love it. Betting on it from 12 noon to 1 a.m.
You have to maneuver things. That's what you have to do.
It used to be we'd be making the call in the morning before the noon kickoff, and then what's the second half USC matchup, so I could get in my last wager of the Saturday.
I did think of you earlier this week because the NFL Network dropped the broadcast. There's 3 Saturday games this week. So let's start with that. We'll get Sal around. So there's 3 Saturday games this week, 1, 4:30, and 8:15. And the only notable with the broadcast crews is that the first game is going to be Noah Eagle, Ian Eagle's son, and Nate Burleson. So it's a little bit of a different crew. So I'm excited to hear that crew. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that.
But which game is that? Is that the Vikings or the Vikings?
Yes.
4:30?
No, 4:30 is Browns Ravens, and then the night game is Bills Dolphins. It's Vikings against someone, a bad team, I think, a very bad team. On 1:00. So I was looking at this. I was looking at the schedule and stuff, and I will say, because I think I busted your balls about this when the schedule came out months and months ago. To have a full NFL slate of games on Christmas Eve is going to be a problem.
Thank you. I was ahead of the curve on this one. I hate that Roger Goodell is doing this stuff. I get why.
Well, they have no choice. They have no choice because they're not going to play the full. Now, I will say this. I would much prefer the full slate of 16, 14 games on Sunday, Christmas Day, than Saturday, Christmas Eve. Because Christmas Eve is a bigger deal.
Because Christmas Eve for us is the bigger deal. But come on. I'm telling you, the game that I want to watch more than any probably that weekend is going to be the Cowboys and Eagles. It's at 4:25 Christmas Eve. It's a non-starter. I cannot do it. I can't do it.
So the 1:00 game this Saturday that Noah Eagle and Nate Burleson will call is Colts at Vikings. Now, so it's funny. I heard our good friend Chris Russo talking about the Christmas Eve stuff, and he was saying he's got a problem because he has to go to church, and he was talking about the Eagles-Cowboys game, and the way he phrased it, he just goes, I want to watch Eagles-Cowboys. I got to go to church. The bottom line is this. I'm dead. I'm dead on Christmas Eve. I will say,
exactly.
Listen, the 1:00 games you can get. So Commanders-Niners is not terrible. So it's only 2 games on Christmas Eve in the late window. Commanders-Niners and Eagles-Cowboys. That's it for the late window.
And nothing that night, right?
Yes, Raiders-Steelers. You don't have to. You can blow that off.
Yeah, nothing that night. Exactly.
I'll say this: the fact that at 4:25 there's only one game you got to lock in. That makes it a little like that'll be on the TV at my parents' house. It's just a matter of how close I can pay attention to it.
Not the way that we would normally want to. And for me, I'll take it a step further. Like I sat around all Thanksgiving with football on all day. There is no chance. I wouldn't even want to do that to my family. They're going to be like, dude, like take a break. I want to watch the game, but I prefer on the one day a year that I love more than any, Christmas Eve, I'd prefer to have, I don't know, Home Alone on in the background or Miracle on 34th Street or Christmas music. I can't be worried about Dak Prescott and the freaking Eagles on Christmas Eve.
Well, that'll be over at least by 7:30.
Yeah, but for me, we got young kids, my sisters, and my niece and nephew, whatever.
Right.
Like 7:38, you're wrapping up that night.
Oh, is that way? Okay. See, that's prime. Like,
maybe that's a little early, but still, like with the baby, our bedtime is 8, 9 o'clock. So even if we extend it to 10 or 11, it's still,
Here, you always got to find the positives. The positives here is, the night game is Raiders-Steelers, so you're not going to be missing anything.
Right. That's true.
Have you?
I'm not watching that game, and I probably won't watch the 1:00 games either, and I definitely won't be betting on them. Well, I shouldn't say definitely. Never rule anything out, but I don't think I will.
That was a quick retraction. Where do you stand on your Christmas shopping?
It's just so different. I don't have. Here's where I stand. I don't have the time to give it enough thought. There are things that, you got to take care of. Okay, let's pay out this guy and this guy and whatever. Like you got to go over the garbage man and the people.
This is good. This is good. What do you give the garbage men and what do you give the mail carrier?
I honestly forgot what it was last year, so I have no idea. I mean, $50, $100.
Yeah, I think I give 50, and I think I may have mentioned that on Twitter, and everyone called me like a cheap bastard. So it's a little, I don't know. Here's the thing. I feel like the garbage men, I don't even know if that's politically correct. Garbage people? I don't know. I've never seen a woman doing it, but I don't want to offend anyone.
The employees who pick up the trash. How about that? Yeah.
They're dealing with some nasty stuff. And I'm very good. I put my bags in the pail. Like I have people I see on my block, they throw the bags on the street. You're supposed to put it in the pail. Don't be an animal. Okay. But they come twice a week. The mail carrier 6 days a week without fail. So I try to determine the gift on the difficulty of the job, and I don't know which job is more difficult.
Great
Who
question.
deserves the bigger tip? The mail people or the garbage people? Who deserves the bigger tip?
And with the garbage people, you got multiple people. You got the driver, you got the two.
That's another issue because they're splitting it. They're not getting the full cut, but they have help. The mail person doesn't have help.
Right. And then also I had last year a curveball thrown. I was ready to give the mail person the Christmas gift, and it was somebody that I didn't recognize. And I'm like, wait a minute. Is this a substitute route? Is this a new, what's happening here? And will the person who was doing this, will they think that I'm not taking care of? The whole thing is a mess. I wish
the
it was
anxiety I get from having to do those. I don't get anxiety. Listen, we've eaten in restaurants, you and I together, a million times. I get no anxiety in the restaurant with the tip. I see what the amount is. I know 25%. Boom. I always leave, get a haircut. I know what the tip. But those things like that, those nebulous things, I never know what to do. I never know what to tip delivery people. Someone delivers a pizza, someone delivers Chinese food, they're bringing one thing, they're bringing 10 things. I never know.
And they're not serving you, but they are driving it to you if it's in different weather. The whole thing. My biggest issue with the garbage people is how to get it to them. Last year, I legitimately remember hearing the truck coming down the block and waking up and running out in my pajamas to give it to them because they say you can't leave it on the lid of the can. But what am I going to do? Wait around all day for when they come? I mean, I got stuff to do here. I got to go to work. I can't just wait around till the garbage men come to pick up the garbage to go give them their tip. I mean, it's long.
I get them. Yeah, I do that. I look out the window, wait for them to cut. It's the benefit of work. I'm working from home, so I can look out the window have my laptop there and, maybe over. I'm trying to think if we should talk about sports stuff. Keep going with this because I have I'll bring this up. If you get takeout, let's say from a diner, do you ever get takeout from a diner or Outback?
Very rarely, but I do Uber Eats every weekend. So I don't know about diners specifically or Outback.
But you don't pick up, you get it delivered.
Yes, majority of the time.
My question is, if you let's say you ordered food at a diner for takeout and you went and picked it up yourself. Not all of us can live the life of luxury and get delivery for $20 a delivery from Uber Eats.
Right.
Do you tip the people who hand you the food in the diner when you do takeout?
No, absolutely not. I had that happen from work, right? I ordered something in from work. I went to pick it up at the diner, and then they give you these screens now where it puts you on the spot, and you feel like a jerk because, enter tip amount, and everybody's going to see me say no tip. But in reality, what did they do? They're not doing anything. I don't care if I'm the bad guy. It happens at stadiums now too. You go to get a popcorn and a soda at the stadium, enter the tip, custom amount 20%. What do you think? I'm tipping 20%. I'll give you my popcorn. Come on.
That's different. So let me say, my good buddy Diesel. Mm-hmm. I've had this ongoing battle with Diesel and his wife, Alicia. They're two of my best friends, love them to death. But we've had this battle because if, let's say I call up the diner and I say, give me a soup, a turkey club, and a burger deluxe.
Right.
Not all for me, even in my fatter days. But I go there, they hand me the bag. I always would give them $2-3 singles, right. Because the person is putting it all together for me. So I feel like they're providing a service. I was told that's ridiculous. Now you're telling me that's ridiculous. I think you guys are just missing here's the thing. The popcorn, no, you don't tip. You go order a bagel and cream cheese, you don't tip. Because, bagel stores have all that now.
But if I call in an order...
But if someone's putting together an order for you, they throw in the utensils, the ketchup.
That's their job.
Well, here's the thing. If you went in and ate that way... Well, this is the layer to it. The diner by my house where I do the takeout from, one of the waiters or waitresses puts that all together, takes the order on the phone and puts the order together. So I feel like that's part of... So they deserve... it's different if it's all right. Do you ever do the curbside pickup at Outback? Do you tip the person that brings you the bag of food there with the curbside?
Good question. I think I've done that once in my life at Applebee's. I don't recall if I tipped or not on that. I mean, if somebody's walking out to the car with food, probably worthy of a tip. Now, how much? I mean, that's a different story.
Right.
If you're getting served food, do you tip at a buffet? What, because they brought out the utensils? If you go to whatever buffet it is, are you tipping that as well when I'm serving myself?
That actually used to be a big thing when I used to go to AC all the time in my earlier days, where you go to the buffet and someone would come bring you the dish, the utensils, and then clean up. And then you're supposed to tip them even though you get the food. It's all a mess. We're going to get so much shit for this because there'll be people who say we're cheap or not cheap. You know, like people get very passionate about tipping.
I am not cheap when it comes to that. I like taking care of people that work for the tip. I also don't believe in any situation that I should feel obligated to tip. You should be tipping because you want to, because a good service was provided. The garbage guys or whoever, the people who pick up the garbage, they provide a service all year long. They have earned that tip. So whatever it is that you give them, same thing with the mail people. They have earned that tip based on a year's worth of work for service to us as a family, as a house, whatever it may be. The other stuff, it's like, I called in an order. I'm paying for the order. You're giving it to me. Where's the service here? I don't need to tip on that necessarily. My thoughts.
The worst thing about everything you said is that you got food from Applebee's. Oh, it's the worst.
Oh, that was a long time ago. You're talking about Outback. Applebee's.
Outback is listen. Outback is Tom Brady. Applebee's is
really
is Derek Carr. I mean, you know.
I've never had Outback. Maybe once years ago.
I'm a huge Outback fan. Huge.
I love the boneless wings at Applebee's. That I could have. Their boneless wings are great.
I couldn't think of a bad quarterback. How did I come up with Derek Carr? Who would have? I'm trying to think. Who's? Yeah, that wasn't the right person. I was thinking
Daniel Jones.
No, who's like Outback is Tom Brady. Applebee's is
Baker Mayfield.
No, the other guy. What's his name? Jon Wolford.
Oh,
that would be a better analogy.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Did you happen to see? And I didn't watch it. I saw the clips. Bill Simmons. No, it wasn't. Yeah, it was Bill Simmons on the Manning cast.
I saw the clip. Yeah.
And Peyton sharing two unbelievable Bill Belichick stories. The first, the Belichick selected Peter Boulware to a Pro Bowl because then Art Modell would have had to pay Boulware $1 million bonus, and Modell had fired Belichick when he was coach of the Browns. And the other story was that the Chargers long snapper at the time, David Binn, was dating Pamela Anderson. So Belichick selected him to the Pro Bowl, and then he didn't show up with Pamela Anderson. And Belichick said, "Where's Pamela Anderson?" The guy said, "Oh, she stayed home." And Belichick said, "Why the fuck did I select you?" Those are unbelievable Belichick stories.
That's fantastic.
That was a great job.
Belichick. I always believe that there's much more of a personality behind there that we haven't seen, but I love it.
That was a great job by Peyton telling those stories.
I haven't watched the Manning cast this year, but I did see those clips.
Yeah, same here. And then the last thing, for all the people who hate the wrestling talk, Vice, which usually does a tremendous job with two of their wrestling shows. They do the Dark Side of the Ring, and then they do Tales of the Territory. They're both tremendous. They did a 2-hour special that they were promoting like crazy on Tuesday night about Vince McMahon, and it was awful. Don't watch it.
Really?
Yeah, I was very disappointed. I don't like being
Tales of the Territory.
No, it was like a Dark Side of the Ring, which is so good. They do so, but all they did was rehash old clips of old shows, and I wasted 2 hours, and I had to mention that because I don't like wasting 2 hours. It was annoying.
Yeah,
it was 2 hours. I could have been scrolling through TikTok.
Oh God, talk about a waste.
I get good content on TikTok.
Yeah, you and my wife have that in common. I can't get into the TikTok stuff.
If you're in the content game, you would be on, because all the teams post. There's good clips on there and stuff like that.
Don't care. I don't care. And pretty soon, I hope they start charging for it. Subscription. They should. Why not? Well, if they provide more content than Disney Plus, why can't they get $8.99 or whatever it is a month?
All right. So let's end with this. Now it's official. Everyone's going to lose their blue check mark in a few months. They say.
Oh, like you and I?
Yeah, everyone.
Oh, okay.
Unless you cough up the $8 a month. Will Sal Licata, WFAN Radio New York, SNYTV in New York, and probably the person I know who hates Twitter the most, cough up $8 a month for the blue check?
Do you remember when Hulk Hogan was asked if he would take the money from Ted DiBiase for the championship belt?
I remember that great.
No, there's no way I would ever pay. I don't care if it is a quarter. I am not paying anything to have the blue check mark. I want you to take it away. Take it away, please. Make me irrelevant on Twitter.
I'll pay a quarter for a blue check mark. I'll admit that.
I think you're paying it. Why do
you want the blue check mark taken away?
I mean, I don't. I just don't care about it.
Okay. All right.
I don't. I mean, it was. Look, I'm not going to lie. It was nice to have, especially if you're trying to, book guests, whatever it may be, or have more of a presence for what we do. I think it helped. The key word there. I don't care anymore, and I feel like if they take the blue check mark away, it makes Twitter, in my mind, even less important than people think that it already is. So I look forward to the day.
I'm laughing because here's the thing. I believe every word you say. I don't think you're lying. I don't think you're performing. I think everything you just said is accurate. But I know I'm going to get a text be like, look at this shit. They took my blue check mark away today. I know it's going to happen. It's too funny. All right. Well, Sal, I don't know what we're going to do with the Christmas schedule here with the pod, but I'm sure we'll have you on next week and we'll discuss a little.
Yeah, maybe
Christmas.
Not the last week of the year, but next week. I mean, I'll probably be around Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tuesday
All
or
right.
Wednesday.
Have a good week as we march towards the holiday, and stay safe.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right, my thanks to Jon Wertheim, Greg Olsen, Sal Licata. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you're not a subscriber, hit the subscribe button. Subscribe to the SI Media Podcast. Helps tremendously. Also, leave a review on Apple. We'll read it on an upcoming SI Media Podcast. So hit the 5 stars, write a review on Apple, and I'll be sure to address it on the pod. If you missed any recent episodes, go into the archives. Check them out. Richard Deitch from The Athletic was on last week. Mike Tirico, Kevin Burkhardt, Joe Buck, Jim Nance, all recent guests on the SI Media Podcast. So go to the homepage, check them out, and subscribe to the pod. All right, we'll see you next week. Christmas show, and we'll wrap up the new year after that. All right, stay safe. Take care.